There's this huge fish kill in what's now known as the Oklahoma River. And I went to the water director at that time. John, oh my gosh, this is a tragedy. There's a fish kill in the Canadian River. And he said, well, that is great news. What do you mean that's not great news? He said, 4 or 5 years ago, there weren't enough fish to kill in that river. That water body today is an Olympic training center for rowing and kayaking, and it will be hosting those water sports in the LA 28 Olympics.
Welcome to the Make Water Work podcast, where we dive into the people, ideas, and innovations shaping the future of water. I'm your host, Isaac Pellerin, and alongside my co-host, Megan Glover, the founder of 120 Water, we bring you insights from hundreds of incredible conversations we've had over the past 9 years with inspiring and energizing leaders in the water industry. Each week, we share those stories and conversations with entrepreneurs, community champions, and innovators who are making water work for everyone. Whether you're a water professional, a curious innovator, or simply passionate about our most precious resource, this podcast is for you. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the Make Water Work podcast, where we celebrate the leaders, innovators, and servants who are making water work for everyone. And so we have a wonderful guest today. Megan, tell us who we get the honor of talking to today.
Yes. So today we've got a wonderful guest. It is Shellie Chard. And Shellie, it's wonderful to have you here today. She is the current president of the Collaborative Environmental Solutions, but most recently, as of a few months ago, just retired for a 34-year career at the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality, where she retired as the Water Quality Division Director. So I've had the pleasure of getting to know Shellie over the last year, and just every conversation that I have with Shellie, I learn more about her expertise and just knowledge of this industry. And it really is vast and it is deep. And I'm just so excited that she would share some of her important time with us today. So welcome, Shellie.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yes. Well, we are happy to have you here on the podcast. And as we always like to start the conversation, how did water find you?
Well, water definitely found me. It was not something that said, oh, I want to do this. But as I've reflected over the years, I've always kind of been a beach girl. That's my happy place. Toes in the sand, ocean waves, the ocean breeze. But, I grew up in a family that is very medical and education focused. Lots of teachers, doctors, nurses, pharmacists. And it's like, that's not me.
Yeah.
And so I decided engineering was for me. So I went down that path and got my degree in chemical engineering and biotechnology, and then had the opportunity to go to work for the state of Oklahoma Water Resources Board. I had a boyfriend. He was in Oklahoma City. He wasn't leaving. So how could I possibly leave? So I took the job at the Water Resources Board, working on Clean Water Act things, and I loved it.
Oh, wow.
Ultimately, got rid of the boy, found my career.
Kept what matters.
It was meant to be, just not the direction I thought. And so just a few months into my job at the Water Resources Board, the state created a new agency, and that was the Department of Environmental Quality. So I was one of its first employees, and I decided, maybe I didn't want to just work with industries. And my boss, chief engineer, was like, have I got a deal for you? Welcome to municipal water.
Ooh,
and that was really kind of my home for a really long time. I loved that. And he was a person that was very old school, and he didn't type, so somebody had to type things. He didn't really, speak in front of public really well, but he was great technically. And he was always asked, does somebody want to, whatever it is? And so I said yes when asked. And so then he said, okay, well, since you've read all this and she filed all this, since you kind of have an understanding of all of this, come with me to this meeting. Come meet this EPA person. Come sit beside me in this big room. Listen, learn. And then it was, I don't need to go. You do this. You got it.
I love that.
And so I morphed more into a policy person at that time, and ultimately landed in 2010 as the water director, and had the opportunity to work with many state, regional, national, international organizations. So, some people say it's luck when those things happen, and a certain amount of it is. My boss could have been a jerk, but he wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
And so it really just launched into a passion that I didn't recognize I had until I was an adult.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, Shellie, that is such a good example of succession, the right type of succession planning, and putting people in the room so they can maybe have exposure to things that they otherwise wouldn't. And you are a perfect example of how that led you into, a career you didn't even know possible, right? Because you were put in the room. And
Right, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, we don't do enough is bring young leaders in the room to have exposure to those conversations that then may lead to paths where you just don't even know where it may take you.
Absolutely. And, I'm still in touch with that first true mentor. And, he was at my retirement party and all the things. And it was so fun, getting to talk about, because I know how I saw things unfold, but it was really nice to hear him. And he said, well, I was like, why? Why me? Why not 20 others? And he said, well, I asked and you said yes.
Wow.
Okay. Note to self, say yes more often.
Say yes more often. Yeah.
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 That's awesome. Yeah. And
Great story.
I mean, seriously, congratulations on the 34 years at DEQ. Like, what an accomplishment, but also more of a reflection of the impact that you had, not just for Oklahoma, but for really the whole country. And I would love if you could walk us through the evolution of what you experienced in the industry throughout your time at DEQ. A lot of regulation shifts in 34 years. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, so much change. One of the kind of random things that, again, as I was thinking about it, I was the only female in the room for so much of my career. Wastewater, it's still very male dominated. Drinking water is kind of evened out. But so that's an interesting shift just to watch happen. Why did it happen? Well, all kinds of reasons, but just interesting to see it. One of my favorite stories that I always tell if somebody asks me, how would you illustrate, the changes in our approach to water or environment and those sorts of things. And I was, 22, 23 years old. I was, new and excited and interested in learning all of these things, but mostly I was young and knew nothing.
Yeah. Young and knew nothing.
And, got the phone call. There's a huge fish kill in what's now known as the Oklahoma River. It was the Canadian River at that point in time. And I went to the water director at that time. John, oh my gosh, this is a tragedy. There's a fish kill in the Canadian River. And he said, well, that is great news.
Okay.
What? What do you mean that's not great news? He said, 4 or 5 years ago, there weren't enough fish to kill in that river.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, oh, okay, that's a different perspective. Not to minimize the fact that, okay, we've got to figure out where the spill came from and what happened. But that water body today is an Olympic training center for rowing and kayaking.
Wow.
And it will be hosting those water sports in the LA 28 Olympics. Oklahoma is part of that because we have one of the best venues in the world.
That's awesome.
And it's in a river that somewhere in the 40 years ago was so polluted there were no fish. And 30 years ago, we were still having fish kills, but there were at least fish to kill. And now it's this unbelievable water sport training facility, and it's open to the public, and there are all these great things. So I think that's something that is super exciting that I've gotten to watch kind of in my backyard unfold over time. And I think one of the most unsettling evolutions that I have watched and experienced over the last 30 years is the degradation of trust. Well, I read it on the internet, so it must be true, and all water is going to kill us all from whatever contaminant or, whatever bacteria, whatever potential disease. Oh, we have to drink bottled water because our water's not safe. And while admittedly there are areas in this country where that is a true statement, the vast majority, that's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as we see some of the testing coming out on some of the bottled water, we're seeing higher levels of PFAS. We're seeing higher levels of micro and nanoplastics. And, that's, to be overly dramatic, it is soul crushing. That's not how it should be. And I think that is one of the biggest changes I've seen. And that's a challenge we have got to resolve or improve. So, those are a few of the things I guess I would say are kind of some significant changes over 3 decades.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That kind of makes me think of, if we think about the past 3 to 4 decades, as the internet came into existence and as information can be discovered, and then misinformation can be moved through very quickly. I also am just thinking about some of the impact of regulations like the lead and copper rule revisions or the CCR, some of the other that are saying, hey, the combating of that is more transparency, more upfront, frequent communication built into some of the policies.
Yeah, absolutely. And, being a regulator for so many years, run and hide is, sometimes a defense strategy. When you're constantly, you have state legislators, maybe, your congressional delegation are unhappy with you because you're being too hard, restrictive, whatever. And then you have the general public and maybe a subset of the medical community or maybe a community action group are yelling at you for the same issue, but because you're not doing enough. And it's, how do you find that middle ground without just wanting to bury your head in the sand? And I think to a certain extent, some of that has happened, maybe not full blown, but at some point, the regulators lost control of the narrative.
Interesting.
Because if I do a podcast where I talk about how many lead and copper sample violation we've had. Well, people are going to think it's bad. People are going to be upset. There are going to be all these things. So maybe if we be quiet, nobody's going to be talking about it and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And in reality, the people who really know and understand aren't doing a lot of the talking. And so the narrative gets filled in. As an example, we had a near riot on our hands because a town in Iowa had the same name as a town in Oklahoma. The town in Iowa had issued a boil water notice, and the people in Northeast Oklahoma were up in arms because we had not done enough outreach and education for them to understand what was wrong with their water.
Yeah,
and
you didn't.
Finally, somebody sent us a screenshot, and finally one of the big news stations was like, the notice is for a town in Iowa. That's why we were silent. This is not.
That's why you were like,
our issue.
Not taking any action. How dare you not take action for the different state?
So,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
There's a lot that, it's very unfortunate that the people in the know let it go, relinquished, got it taken away, whatever it is, but lost control.
It's really interesting that you bring that up because we've had a guest on the show previously that talked about just the need. They're nearing retirement within the next few years, and on this mission to bring more humanity to the job, because they're like in their 30 years they've seen a lot more divisiveness in the water. Like, you can't please everybody, and so then the status quo becomes, well, I'm just going to please no one. You know what I mean? And you kind of illustrated that, like, from a regular's point of view, that if I can't, saying nothing sometimes is the best answer to a lose-lose situation, perhaps. But has it always been that way?
I think it's always been a little bit that way. I think the magnifying glass has gotten significantly bigger.
Got it.
I think as we've seen a shift in state and national approach to politics, regardless of which side you're on, it's incredibly charged, and we have to have a bad guy.
Got it. Yep.
We can no longer have a bad situation we need to resolve. I can remember one of my staff saying to me when there'd been a spill and there are multiple agencies and people involved. It's like, whatever the briefing time is, he's, well, I guess we have a disaster to blame on somebody this afternoon.
Shoot.
And, it was said, with, being sarcastic, but recognizing the reality. This was not going to be, why did the pipe break? It's going to be, it's your pipe.
Whose fault?
It's broken. You caused it, as opposed to, the pipe is broken. There are concerns. Here are the human health concerns. Here are the environmental concerns. What are we going to do before we can get it fixed? So I think that's definitely something that has shifted and become a lot more difficult to deal with.
Yeah. We just can't accept that bad things happen and we're going to work our darndest to fix it. It's who created that thing, and how can I put their head on the chopping block, which is...
Yeah. And it's put you in a position where, from shaping regulation too, just how thoughtful you have to be in building policy frameworks and those kind of things. And I'm kind of curious, like, if there are any moments that stick out to you in your time at DEQ. Like what kind of rises to the top and things at the forefront?
Well, something that I will say, every state has their own approach, to how they develop regulations. And that's shaped either in a constitution or in legislation. One thing that I think Oklahoma really got right when the agency was formed back in 1993 is you have the staff who do the work, but we also had an advisory council that is appointed equally by the Senate pro tem, the Speaker of the House, and the governor. They have staggered terms. They represent key areas of regulation. So, for example, the Water Quality Management Advisory Council has small rural water, an certified operator, agriculture, municipal government. So all of these experts that, it's people who are doing this work all day, every day.
Yeah. That's smart.
And then those people meet a minimum of 3 to 4 times a year. They're looking at what are the regulations that are being proposed by the staff. Sometimes it's merely adopting the federal by reference, but a lot of times this has been a problem. We had minimum chlorine levels on the drinking water side, which on the federal level is just a recommendation. But we had issues, so this is how we address issues. We have construction standards, but this group of experts, they can either recommend it to the next level. They can send it back to the staff. They can say no. They can appoint a work group who works with the staff to try to develop appropriate regulations. And once they recommend, it goes to another body, the Environmental Quality Board.
Okay.
They can hire and fire and set salary of the executive director and approve rules. That's all they do. They don't do any permitting, enforcement, nothing. But these are all 5-year appointments. There are environmental organizations. There are large quantity water users, municipal, rural water, oil and gas, agriculture, and they review our rules in Oklahoma to say, yes, we have laboratory representatives. So it's all of these things, questions that come from those organizations, from those bodies are exactly what you mentioned. How much is this going to cost to comply?
Right.
What is the benefit of this? What is the detriment? And before they can vote, there are anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 public hearings or public meetings. They may be formal with a court reporter, or it may be, we're going to be at the Tulsa Water Plant auditorium. Come listen, come share.
That's neat. Yeah. Come see that. Oh, that's smart. I guess I didn't have full appreciation for all of the stakeholders at the table as you're making decisions and inputs. And that is really smart. That is a really smart way to design that. Yeah. So you've, in addition to your longstanding career in Oklahoma, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on, you've been a very active leader in our industry in general. So serving in prestigious positions, including as a WEF trustee, ASDRA president, you're a current member of the National Drinking Water Advisory Council and the Groundwater Protection Council. Just, I guess, what have the participation in these roles kind of meant to you? And I think, what have you kind of taken away, from this participation and either put into your role at DEQ or just as a professional in water?
Yeah. So I mentioned early on about, the first chief engineer that I worked closely with. He was very active with some of these organizations in the background, on some of the committees, that sort of thing. And he really pushed me, figure out where your interests lie and get involved. And so again, that's one of those, when someone says, do this, you say yes and figure out what yes means later. So, things like ASDWA, the Association of State Drinking Water Administrators, the counterpart Association of Clean Water Administrators, those are the state regulators who are trying to deal with whatever it is, whether it's a new federal rule, guidance, whatever it is. So those organizations really allowed me to sit around a table and talk to the people who do what I do. We could talk about our experience, what was good, what was bad, share some lessons learned so we didn't all have to learn all the lessons the hard way. I think that was really
So
important.
Right.
Yeah.
The Groundwater Protection Council is kind of an interesting group in that they deal with not only water quality, a little bit of water quantity, but also oil and gas, underground injection. So that was kind of a broadening horizons opportunity. Definitely learned a lot more about oil and gas and how critical that is. People say, well, we have all these other options for other energy. It's like, yes, but the petroleum products, that's in all of our plastics. You can't lose
Right.
that, or you lose so many other areas. So that, kind of allowed me to go back a little bit to my education. Chemical engineering, that's, has a lot of oil and gas overlap. And then, getting into 2010, 11, 12, we had worst drought on record, worse than the Dust Bowl.
Oh, no.
We had better conservation practices as far as farming, and so all of the topsoil didn't leave, but we had no water. So that kind of opened the opportunity to engage with Clean Water Act professionals, Safe Drinking Water Act professionals, oil and gas professionals. How do we deal with this incredible lack of water? We had communities who were 20, 30, 40 days away from having no drinking water, no source water to treat.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what are we going to do? So that really led into a lot of the Water Reuse Association, some of their work, Water Environment Federation, American Water Works. It kind of became all hands on deck because we weren't the only ones.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And being able to build those connections, it was great that, well, yes, our situation very different from Georgia, but they were having a water crisis. And well, that was more because of other states and those relationships. It was like, okay, that's not my problem today.
Right.
But
I'm going to file
later
that
I got
away.
to deal
Right.
with that.
Yeah.
And so these organizations really allowed that connection. And then, not telling you anything you don't know, you start sharing your story, and there's always somebody who says, I'm dealing with that now. So glad to hear that. Or, ooh, I wish I had heard that before I made this decision, which took us down a different path. This one might match up. But by being willing to share not just the successes, but the challenges, really gave me a lot of opportunity on a state, regional, and national stage. And then ultimately, was selected to be part of a mission to Israel with the State Department, EPA, and U.S. Department of Agriculture, which was a fantastic opportunity to talk about emergency response. My emergency response was tornadoes. Their emergency response was missile. Very different, but still emergency for their water system, for their wastewater system, for their communities. So by being involved in those organizations, really got to see and experience all kinds of things that a little girl from Oklahoma would have never dreamed of.
Oh my gosh, right. Oh, that is amazing.
What sticks out too is that, like so much of it is you following some of your curiosity, what you're interested in. And sometimes it can be like, oh, that's interesting or that's neat. And that's true, but it was also turns out to be incredibly critical to the mission. Like you're learning a lot and also problem solving for communities that are 20, 30 days away from not having water.
Yeah.
It's not just interesting work.
It's mission critical.
It's mission critical.
It's life-saving work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess, you just have such, you have experience, you have lived experiences, and I think now you have perspective, right? You're not the 23-year-old saying, we have a fish dying in the river. You've seen the movies, lots of movies before. So what kind of wisdom, as we think about, our industry at the highest level, 5, 10, 30 years from now, what do you think are the most critical things that we need to be paying attention to and getting ahead of, right, to build the most resilient communities?
I think it's super overarching. There's so many things that come under the statement.
Right.
But water management.
Yeah.
Regardless of what kind of water it is it seawater? Is it high salinity groundwater? Is it pristine spring water? Whatever it is, we've got to do better managing our limited water resources.
Mm-hmm.
We think about, conservation. It's summer. It's hot, odd, even water. Well, that's great, I guess, in the moment. But why do we continue to plant non-native grasses in western Oklahoma that require a lot of water in a place where we don't have very much?
Yes. Yeah.
Why do we continue to allow once through cooling water for data centers and power plants? Why are we not capturing that water, treating it, cooling it, whatever we need to do, and using it over and over? A time is going to come where we just can't do that sort of thing. More and more of the country is getting experience in drought management. Well, okay, it's getting to be a bigger club, but that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
More of us can commiserate, but what are we doing about it? Why do we treat oil and gas produced water like it's some toxic, horrible something we have to inject and get it out of the water cycle? Well, discharging it into a pristine stream, yes, that would be very bad. But why don't we treat it and use it where it makes sense? So, that's definitely something I think we have to figure out and do better as humans. I also think we have to reclaim the narrative out in the world about water. My favorite thing to totally freak somebody out who's on a kick, a close family member, I wouldn't do this publicly, but, as somebody started, there's, all of these contaminants in water and we just need to purify it and we need to do all these things. I was like, well, if you completely purify water and you drink it, it will kill you, right? And it's like, what? What are you talking about? It will leach out all of your critical minerals that it takes to keep you alive, that it takes your bones to be strong. And somehow through this process and the race to zero for all contaminants, we've forgotten that it takes some of these minerals, and so water's different.
And minerals,
vitamins,
mineral water. Yeah, all of the things that are. Yeah, we're not just made of water.
That's a great point.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's I love both of those macro they're not even macro, they're life sustaining, quite frankly, issues that you raise. And I on the water management piece, what do you think is it going to take a state running out of water what do you think it's going to take to click for the entire United States that needs to be a critical practice, and maybe that needs to be the function that clean and dirty and all of the waters run into? Maybe it's time for a national reorg of actually how we think about water, and that maybe has to start of how we organize our functions. But what do you think is part of the solution to getting to that spot?
I think, there are a lot of pieces to that. Something that I've been saying for, I don't even know how long now, a long time. And the response I get is, oh, but that will take too long. But it's a change in education. It's a change in what and how we teach our children in elementary school, middle school, high school. It's a change in how we talk to college students. It's a change to how we train and educate the water workforce, because everybody wants it fixed now. And one of my Secretary of Environment that I worked for, he would routinely say, this is a 10-year problem.
Yep.
And if you wait 10 years to start, it's still a 10-year problem.
Yes.
And it's
That's it.
right.
Yeah.
This is a problem we have to start working to resolve. Is training and educating our children, is that the end all be all? No. But if we teach them differently when they're younger, they take that with them and they apply it. I was speaking to the board of advisors for the College of Engineering at the University of Oklahoma. And several of the other members were saying things like, we're not here to talk about water. We need to be talking about the use of AI and data centers. And it's like, well, but you have to have water and energy to make the AI work. And so it wasn't meant as we don't need water, but because their business model was focused on how do we use and improve AI, there wasn't the realization of all the things you have to bring into it to make work. I don't know if this is still true, but it was a study done in California, research study, and it was a simple yes or no query uses half a liter of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, holy cow, how many gallons, how many millions of gallons are we using talking about? Well, it's easier for me to ask Copilot than it is to type out all the words and go read.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the day and age.
So I think, kind of how we deal with how the general public, not just the water sector, thinks about water, talks about water, uses water. One of the things that I routinely do, if I'm talking to a class or even a water sector group, if you haven't read the book, The Big Thirst by Charles Fishman, you have to. It's like required reading. It teaches you a whole lot. And, so we have to stop living in our own tiny little bubble. And it's like, well, it's flooding. Why are we talking about drought? And again, one of the previous cabinet secretaries would say, in Oklahoma, drought never ends. It is merely interrupted by periods of flooding. And we may be drought in the west and flooding in the east at the same time. But when you're dealing with those extremes for yourself, you're not thinking about, oh, well, the communities that were 20, 30, 40 days away from having no water, it was a tragedy, and they were looking at spending millions of dollars, even though they were very small, to try to get water. But then it rained.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, it's 2 years later. Now we're
No,
worried.
Yeah. 'Cause-
Yeah.
No. I think I'm Shellie. I'm so thankful that you've not officially retired on a beach, your happy place, and are still continuing to give back to our community, because it's you control the narrative that we all need to hear, and you take such a long view, and I think a very important kind of one water shared view that is so important to continue to educate us. I know every one of our conversations, I leave more educated, and just the general, your colleagues, the public. And so just grateful that you're here on the podcast with us and you could share this time, but then also grateful that you're not at the beach just yet. You're still contributing in a very meaningful way into the sector, and look forward to what you're going to accomplish in this next chapter as well.
Oh, thank you. It's been great to be here with you. And, I went to visit the beach 2 weeks ago. So, I'm still, I'm visiting, but I'm coming home and, staying very much connected. I guess what started out as a job became a career, became a passion. And I think the passion will stay with me forever. I don't imagine that it could ever slip away.
And we need you, so keep it going.
Yeah. And cannot say anything to add to that. The passion, it just flows from you, and I'm so glad that it gets to flow to all of you who have been listening in, and we thank you so much for tuning into this podcast, for hearing from folks like Shellie. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, comment, and also let us know who else you would want to hear from, who is someone who makes water work. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Make Water Work podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. Connect with us on LinkedIn or send us a message. Together, we can make water work for everyone.